Smartphone or telegram? Starbucks or saloon? Uber or horse and saddle? Do you think you could survive in the Wild West? Fashion, shopping, travel, and entertainment were all part of life in the Wild West, just a lot different than what we're used to today. So see if you would be up to the challenges of life in the Wild Wild West versus the comforts of the 21st century. Horse versus car. With the western expansion of the American frontier, the Wild West is considered to be the 30-year period from 1865 to 1895. And no matter what era you live in, people have always needed a way to get from point A to point B. In the Wild West, horses with single riders became the main method of transport for most people. However, rides were typically rough and dusty and might require crossing treacherous terrain like rivers. Nowadays, horses have been swapped out for horsepower, and we get around easier and faster with cars, trucks, and SUVs. But traffic jams, road rage, and struggling with GPS directions means it isn't always a casual Sunday drive. Letters versus instant messaging. The first iPhone hit the market in 2007, meaning communication over a century ago in the days of the Wild West was anything but instant. Getting a telegram was the equivalent to a phone call today, and even though a telegram could be sent rather quickly, you would still have to wait for it to be delivered to your door. Sending handwritten letters was the most common form of communication and relied on railway delivery or horse-based mail delivery systems like the Pony Express. The Pony Express was founded in 1860 and covered a 2,000-mile route stretching from California in the west to destinations as far east as Missouri. Using those methods, it could take weeks or months to drop a note to your loved ones, as opposed to today's modern miracles of instant messenger apps, texting, FaceTime, emails, and social media feeds. We can now communicate over vast distances quicker than any telegram of the olden days ever could. Oil lamps versus electricity. Life at home in the Wild West probably wouldn't feel very homey by today's standards. The bare-bones construction of a simplistic log or wood cabin had no running water or electricity, and a lack of plumbing or central heating meant water wells and fresh-running streams were needed for H2O, and fireplaces were required to keep rooms at a comfortable temperature. With the Wild West era considered to have ended in 1895, they just missed out on air conditioning since it wasn't invented until 1901, with the first AC system installed in 1902 in Brooklyn, New York. Nowadays, smart thermostats connected to central heating and air conditioning keep the temperature just where you want it, and clean running water is available without stepping foot outside. Today's smart homes allow us to ask Alexa to accomplish basic tasks, but in the Old West, you'd have to yell at the nearest actual person for a helping hand, whether their name was Alexa or not. Without power and light bulbs, oil lamps and candles lit the way around the house, and that fireplace used for providing heat was also most likely used for cooking as well. Today, almost everything in our home runs on electricity. We've now got fridges, stoves, phones, tablets, TVs, and robotic vacuums making life at home a little easier. Cowboy boots versus sneakers. All that low-tech living would definitely be reason enough to get out of the house a little more often. And just like today, you can bet you'd want to look your best while doing so. Getting gussied up for a night on the town in the Wild West would of course include fashion staples like cowboy boots and other leather footwear of various types, wide-brimmed hats for both gentlemen and ladies, not strictly limited to the classic cowboy hat style, and plenty of flowing fringe. Fashion met functionality in those days since limited supply chains and harsh living conditions meant daily outfits had to be practical and built to last. When it comes to daily fashion today, sneakers and sneaker culture have replaced cowboy boots as the dominant footwear, while hoodies and leggings give comfort a priority over the practicality of the old days. Of course, your fashionable faves are just a click away thanks to online shopping and quick shippers like Amazon, which can get you looking good much faster than any delivery from the Pony Express ever could. We've got plenty of Wild West fun still to come, but if you're liking this video, go ahead and give us a quick thumbs up by smashing that like button. And don't forget to subscribe if you're new to our channel. Thanks. Saloon versus social media. So you're ready to hit the town, but what's there to do back in Wild West times? Similar to the pubs and clubs of today, most settlements centered their good times and gaming around a saloon. Stepping through those timeless swinging doors would bring you refreshing beverages, music from both live bands with singers and dancers, or the more low-key option of player pianos. If you didn't want to dance to the tunes, plenty of sit-down options for card games and gambling were available. But be sure to watch your drinks if a good old-fashioned saloon fight breaks out. These days, while a night of clubbing can be fun, we've got the option to leave the roughhousing to the rowdies and find our fun at home, thanks to TikTok scrolling, YouTube binging, and show marathons on Netflix or Disney+. With no such thing as social media, socializing in the Wild West was done in person. Gathering in places like saloons was obvious, and bumping into a pal at the general store wasn't uncommon. Main streets and town squares functioned as meeting hubs, and church services on Sunday helped you catch up with anyone you didn't see during the week. Nowadays, we can bypass all that and keep in contact from the couch thanks to social media with just the press of a thumb. And with the right app, we can easily imagine what we'd look like as a Wild West character. #Saloon Selfie. 911 versus 6-shooter. Keeping your whiskey from spilling during a bar fight wasn't the only thing you needed to watch out for in the Wild West. Safety and security is always a concern no matter the day and age, but in the Old West, skill with a 6-shooter kept you safe from any questionable characters walking the dusty streets or while at home to deal with anyone trying to rustle your cattle under the cover of night. Today, if something goes awry, we can call 911 for help thanks to smartphones. Whether we're home or away, modernized home alarm systems and ring cameras keep watch on unwanted activity around our property. You did have law enforcement in the Wild West, but it relied on a loose system of sheriffs, deputies, public hangings, and an ideal of frontier justice. Those things have evolved today into organized police departments, homeland security, and court systems at the municipal, state, and federal levels. Cattle rustlers, stick-em-up bank heists, train robberies by notorious bad guys like Billy the Kid or Jesse James eventually gave way to shadowy current criminal acts like identity theft, email phishing scams, and credit card fraud that have moved off the dusty trail and into the digital domain. General store versus e-commerce. Not only did the Old West not have email, they didn't even have Amazon. Having your shopping needs met in those days was largely the responsibility of general stores, and they were definitely correctly named. Specializing in nothing, their purchasing options were very much general. Being in the middle of nowhere on a rough and rugged frontier meant general stores needed to carry a little bit of everything. A miniaturized version of the giant department stores, supermarkets, and shopping malls that would dominate the decades to come, general stores were a one-stop shop. Shelves were stocked with necessities of the day like flour, molasses, and sugar for home cooking and baking, tools and ammunition, kerosene for lanterns, and even clothing, candy, and coffee. Of course, much like those kerosene lanterns compared to today's LED lighting, they couldn't hold a candle to today's unlimited shopping options. E-commerce has given us next-day or even same-day delivery on almost anything and everything, with every major retailer at your fingertips providing shopping satisfaction without ever leaving your living room. And if you do want to venture outside, malls, megastores, and discount outlets are all easy to find. Covered wagons versus planes and trains. No high-speed internet and no high-speed travel either. Making the trek over long distances to say howdy to friends and family wasn't fast or fun in the Wild West. We know that travel on horseback dominated the daily local commute, but when it came to long distances, a team of horses would be used to pull covered wagons and stagecoaches, which better protected people and possessions from the harsh elements. But no matter which way you went about it, getting to and from your destination was uncomfortable, slow, and frankly dangerous in the face of the weather, wildlife, or even an ambush, which were all constant risks. Fast forward to today, where boarding an airplane is typically the easiest, fastest, and safest way to travel a long distance. Cars, trains, and cruise ships provide separate options depending on your preference, and snacks, drinks, music, and movies make travel much more bearable. Yes, accidents are still a risk, and delays from the weather are still a constant threat. But being stuck at the terminal for a few extra hours sure beats the weeks and months needed to cross the country in the days of the Wild West. And they had to do it without flight attendants or Wi-Fi. One-room schoolhouses versus online learning. By 1870, all then 37 states in the Union had free-to-attend elementary schools paid for by taxes. But there was a big difference between the long-standing ones in established eastern centers and the ones in the West still finding their way. Schools in the Wild West were typically small, single-room structures that overheated easily in the pre-AC desert climate. One combined class in one room meant combining kids of all ages to learn at the same pace and same time. Attendance sometimes suffered in sparse areas, since kids were often kept at home so they could pick up basic homesteading skills like homemaking and agriculture. The first public high school in America opened in Boston in 1821, and just over 2 centuries later, that system has expanded from east to west and everywhere in between. Today, large public schools are part of the equation. Online learning and degree programs have made education available to everyone, no matter how close they are to the modern-day version of a schoolhouse. Even if some cowboys scoffed at book learning back then, they'd definitely be surprised how small a part physical books actually play in education's new digital age. Beans on the fire versus delivery apps. Sure, beans over an open fire under the stars is what most of us picture when imagining a cowboy dinner in the Old West, but the options back then were a little more versatile. A lack of refrigeration and preservative techniques meant shelf-stable staples like beans were a favorite alongside dried fruit, as well as dried meats like beef jerky and salt pork. Wild game that could be hunted and gathered for protein purposes included buffalo, turkey, bear, and deer. Even smaller snack-sized scores weren't off limits, like skunk, squirrel, and prairie hens. Once things started getting established, farmers and ranchers raised their own pigs and cattle, and chickens provided both meat and eggs. The world's your oyster these days, though, with a world full of options in the pantry and fridge. And of course, we have the luxury of restaurants serving a much more expanded palate than the old-time classic beans and beef jerky diet. To boot, delivery apps like Grubhub and Uber Eats can have that food brought right to your doorstep. If they had delivery apps back then, there would probably be a lot of deliveries to campfires in the middle of nowhere. But would you have to tip the horse as well as the driver? Got an idea for a future video you would like to see? Let us know in the comments section. And for another Now and Then video, stay right here to keep on watching. Thanks.